is the greatest violin teacher that ever lived? If I forced you to answer that question with whoever was the first person to pop into your mind, I'm going to guess I'd probably get a healthy mix of Ivan Galamian, Dorothy DeLays, Leopold Auers, and maybe a few Carl Flesch's thrown in for good measure. However, the problem is, they're all dead. Why does it feel like I have to go back almost 100 years to find legendary pedagogues? And don't say it's because they're dead, because these people were legends in their day, so death is not really a factor here. So where are the modern teaching legends? Now, I don't know if he counts as a legend just yet, but I can tell you this. If I had not spent 3 weeks working with Grigory Kalinovsky, I would not have a teaching career. To give you a grasp of this man's teaching prowess, I am still learning from those 3 weeks I spent studying with him. This man got me to practice open strings for over an hour, and you know what? I enjoyed it. He didn't just teach me technique, he taught me how to think about technique. And since he was so helpful to me, I thought I would share a little bit of his teaching genius with you. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of my own commentary in this video to kind of explain just how impactful some of the things he's teaching in this video were to me, but mostly I'm going to let him speak for himself. And now on to the greatest violin teacher you've never heard of, Professor Grigory Kalinovsky.
Articulation is never about strength. It's about speed of impulse and speed of release or reset. And what I always start with is just learning to flop the fingers, using just the momentum and the weight of the fingers and moving them from the bass knuckles. So kind of like cellists in higher positions, just doing this. And hearing this kind of nice wet smack, rather than dry kind of hit. So once you feel that, you can turn the violin this way and just do it in like different positions. And then you can do it with the violin on your shoulder. So once you feel that and it feels really, really relaxed and yet powerful, then you do it just one finger.
So learning to have this kind of lead weight, as I like to call it, in the fingers has probably been one of the most beneficial things to my own playing. To go from the wet smack to the kind of flaccid, dry hit, as he says, requires you to stiffen up your fingers, which a lot of violinists do unwittingly. So learning this type of finger action is invaluable, and breaking down the practice steps the way he does makes it very easy to understand.
And from there, I actually start the exercises. So for me, one of the crucial things in articulation is actually the preparatory, I call it flick, like being able to move the finger back with lightning speed and yet very relaxed. So this motion. You can even practice it just walking around the street, just doing this, like lightning fast opening and then relaxing. And so the first actual exercise I do is I put metronome. So I put metronome at 60 and I start at 4 beats to a bow and I play one very, very fast note. You start with the second finger on the C sharp on the A string. Right before the third beat. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So one of the most important motions here is that preparatory flick that happens exactly in the middle of the second beat. So you go 1 and 2 and 3, 4. You can practice it without the bow first. 1 and 2 and 3. So that motion back has to be lightning fast, very relaxed, separated from the wrist, and then you simply throw the finger. You don't bang. You throw the finger like the fishing line. So only momentum and speed, nothing else. So again, if you do it correctly, and you can also practice it here. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So if you do it correctly, you hear like a nice satisfying wet smack. And the moment the finger hits, you release and relax the hand. So you don't do this. This is very important. You don't jump back up and then slowly relax. You let the finger rebound and immediately collapse back to that beggar hand position.
Again, I'm not quite sure how many of you understand just how important that little bit of information is. Understanding the concept of the heavy drop, or smuck, is one thing. Being able to immediately release tension in the hand after you hit the string, that is something that will change your playing entirely.
And then you do the bow. And while you're doing open string, you can move the hand around, make sure it's relaxed. do multiple hits. Or you start increasing, like you start doing it in more beats per bow. So 1 and 2, 3 and the 4. 1 and 2, 3 and the 4. So basically you just have to reset your muscles faster. You have to think through those sequences faster.
So what you just witnessed is truly great teaching. Methodical, simple, and straight to the point. I think there's a tendency for some violin students to think that great violin teachers have some kind of hidden wisdom that is going to magically make them improve. No, as a matter of fact, if you don't have the right attitude as a student, great violin teaching is boring. A great violin teacher takes the fundamentals and breaks them down into steps in such a way that the student can easily and methodically follow them. Unfortunately, a lot of people, probably a lot of you, don't want that. Remember when I said Professor Kalinovsky got me to practice open strings for over an hour? How many of you think you could do that and it not be a chore? Well, if you want to be a good violinist, you're going to have to find deep within yourself the kind of attitude that finds that type of practice exciting.
Another very important concept is what the fingertips do during articulation. So it's very important that you never play like this. You never tighten the fingertips. So when the fingers fall, you should have a little bit of a give in the fingertip. If you have ever seen that famous video of slow motion Heifetz playing Scherzo Tarantella in slow motion, you can see that every finger comes down and there is a little bit of a collapse. And so what that creates, it's a much better sound. It helps you control intonation much better and much more subtly. And it also creates that feeling of pseudo vibrato. When you're playing a passage where you don't really have time to vibrate, but you don't want the sound to be dead, when the fingertips have that kind of vulnerability, it creates the feeling that there's a little bit of a shimmer in the sound. So
now, this is quite a bit more advanced than what we've been working on so far, but learning this type of impulse vibrato will make a night and day difference in your sound and musicality. Now, I personally have always found this impulse to come primarily from the arm. It's what I call motor vibrato with my students. You can even get it in 16th notes a little bit. Some people like to call this finger vibrato, but I've never really felt that the impulse comes from the fingers. For me, it's always been the arm. For some other people, it might be the wrist. But the important thing is that if you aren't working on those basic exercises we did in the beginning of this video, you won't be able to get that shimmer in your moving notes. And this is the important thing I want to leave you with. I don't care how old you are or how long you've been playing violin. If you really want to learn to play well, you need to find this kind of teaching and embrace the more boring aspects of learning violin. Do this, and I assure you, you will be shocked at how much better you sound in just 1 year. So in closing, thanks, Mr. Kalinovsky. I wouldn't be here without you. I've been Tobiah Murphy for Tonebase Violin, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.